All right, up next for a review is a Pioneer RT707. I wanted to get the meters going for at least a minute here, but as you can hear this, hear that little rubbing? This take-up reel is pinched, so it's kind of squeezing the tape down here at the bottom. You kind of see the tape flip a little bit. So I'm going to turn that off. I totally forgot about that until I just turned that on. That I need to fix that. But this is the Pioneer RT707. Reel-to-reel tape deck, manufactured between 77 and 1984. It's a direct drive. I guess you can call it direct drive. In terms of the series and where this landed, so the interesting thing was, for at least some of the production years when they were selling the 707, you had the 707 and you had the Pioneer RT1011. And if you look at kind of the form factor or the footprint, right, you had a traditional reel-to-reel, you know, a big box that kind of sits on something. And then you had the introduction of these rack mountable reel-to-reels, right? So you can mount this in a rack and you could get an entire system like the spec, amplifiers and preamps, and, you know, equalizers and all that kind of stuff. You could build this rack, and I'll throw a picture out of an example of that. I've seen these with like a plastic cover or some type of I don't know, almost sticker or label or something that goes here in images. I'm not sure if that came with these, but if you don't like that exposed, right, that exposed mount point, you could, at least I've seen, right, where people have put something there to kind of square it off so these holes are hidden. But yeah, the two different kind of, you know, types of reel-to-reels, the traditional, and then you had the rack mounted one. This isn't a big reel-to-reel, which I personally like. So right now I have an Akai GX77. I'll throw an image up of that. And the reason why I'm running that is because where I have room in my stereo rack, I can only run a small reel-to-reel. So it comes down to the GX77 or the Pioneer RT707. I can't run 10-inch down here. I'd have to like completely reconfigure everything. I'd really have to put it on a speaker, and I don't want to do that. The reason why I don't have this in my system currently is the aesthetic doesn't quite match what I have going on. I've got a Macintosh, and all of my, like VU meter display is LED. So other than on the Macintosh itself, I have LEDs going on and everything. So the Akai has an LED display, and it's totally lame. Neither reel-to-reel is perfect for what I have going on, and I'll kind of talk about that when I talk about the RT707 and the GX77 when I do that review as well. Excuse me, I'm getting over the COVID. So that was the series information, and you know, whether or not there was a 909 available at the same time, or whether it was a 1011 available at the same time. I don't even think I mentioned the 909. So this particular tape deck spanned so many years that at one point it was the 707 and the 1011, and then later on it was the 707 and the 909. And the 909, I would love to get a hold of one of those. They've got blue meters. It would be perfect, right, for what I'm running in my basement. However, those are really, really, really expensive, and they're really, really, really hard to come by. These 707s, you know, this one came into the shop, and this is the cleanest one that I've seen, so I bought it. I have not seen a 909 in the wild. I've seen them for sale locally, but the prices were just way out there. And, you know, hopefully I can come across one someday, and I can do a review on one, maybe own one for a little bit. But for right now, you know, 707 and the Akai GX77 is kind of what I swap in and out of my system. So anyway, later on in the production years, the 707 and the 909 were the two tape decks that you would choose between. And the 909 is rack mountable as well. So in terms of the aesthetic, this is a departure from that traditional big box, as I mentioned earlier. Some of the contemporaries to this, at least later on, were like the TEAC, X7R or X7 or 10X. Earlier, it would have been like the TEAC 3300, right? The 7.5 inch. The 3300 would have been kind of a competitor. Some other Akai models would have been competitors, but the difference was those were just boxes that sat on a table, right? This is rack mounted. So that was the design departure for this particular series. So definitely a smaller footprint, which I really appreciate. You have to have the room to run one of those big 10-inch, box rectangle tape decks. I've got one in my office. It's a Sony something or other. I'm going to do a review on it eventually. Maybe I'll snap a picture and put it in this video. But, I've got one of those. It's really nice. But again, you have to have dedicated space for it. This you can kind of slide into a cabinet, into an opening, into a rack, and it's just a lot easier to find a home for it. So the operation can be a little bit confusing. The hookups, I'll show a picture. Those are easy. However, if you look at the image of the hookups on the back, you see that your outputs are on the back of the 707. So if you're like me, and when I'm working on reel-to-reel decks, which I don't really like to do, but when I get them, a lot of times they come with tapes, and I like to listen to what people recorded. Well, I have not come across a tape yet that was either consistent in terms of speed or consistent in terms of output on the channels. Now this 707 is rock solid, perfect, but the tapes that I play on it are not. So if I have an imbalance, whether it's the placement of speakers in the room or the tape that was recorded, I have to try to reach around to the back, right, to change the output level for the right and left channel. This would be the perfect deck if that were available on the front, in my opinion. Now, we were talking about operation, so that is part of operation. Hookups, super simple. Operation for output, depending upon where you put this, can be a pain in the butt because you've got to reach around to the back of the unit. And like when I have it in my stereo rack down here, I was going to almost curse, but like, I'll get a dang cramp in my shoulder because I'm trying to reach around this thing and I've got a 50-pound amplifier next to it and I've only got a very small opening to get to the back. So that is something that I don't like, and that makes operation a little more difficult. So does the fact that you can kind of get lost in what's going on here. Now, I don't know how many times I hit this pause button thinking it's power, because that's kind of where the power button should be, and it's nice and big. But the power button is actually up here. So that's kind of like wah, right? The speed button is 9.5 and 19. Okay, well, it's usually 7.5 yards. It's usually, 3 3/4, right? Or 7.5. So like that, why just not put what it normally is? 3 3/4 inches per second, right? So that's kind of different. It's not a big thing. You have tape source and monitor. You've got bias, and you've got an EQ setting. You have record on or off for both channels. You have your counter. You have pitch control. And oh, you know what? I pulled this out because that counter stopped working. Now I remember an additional reason why I pulled this out, because I got to fix that counter belt. But you have counter, reset, repeat, and then pitch control in the front, which is awesome. If they just had the output control on the front, it would be perfect, right? And when I talk about the Akai, it's kind of reversed for that one. So you've got pitch control, and then you've got mic level, line level, right? And that's a split, so you've got right and left channel. You've got the pinch roller, mechanism here and all that stuff. You've got rewind and forward depending upon the direction. Stop, play. You've got a direction. So this is normal play, this is reverse play, pause, and then record. Now I haven't found it particularly tricky, but and because I've run so many different tape decks and I work on so many, I have to like look at this a couple of times to remember exactly how to do things on it. And I typically record upstairs on my Sony, which is a really easy tape deck to figure out, and then I will play on like the Akai or the Pioneer, whichever one I have set up down in my basement, because that's where I listen to most of my reel-to-reels. So operation easy, hookups are operation can be confusing, hookups are easy. Serviceability, I've probably worked on half a dozen of these. I have not found them particularly tricky to work on. In terms of like changing the drive belt, it's not super tricky. Changing the lamps, which I'll talk about in a minute, it's not real difficult. However, these meters are kind of floating, so they're not like screwed in. So, you know, if you have to change a lamp in the meter or something like that, kind of getting these re-centered and repositioned, like I can kind of, well, I thought I could kind of push on them. But they're really being held in place by the friction of this front bezel kind of holding them in position. So that's kind of different, at least if I remember correctly. I could totally be off on that too, but I think that's how it works on these. So those meters are kind of floating. But you know, changing lamps and that counter belt, you know, you do have to fish this through a couple of things, but you can typically get to it pretty easily. So servicing them, at least basic service stuff, basic maintenance tasks, not too difficult. If you're looking for one of these, right, you're considering getting an RT707, kind of like me, you have a space limitation and you're down to this or the Akai. Things to look for, what I always look for on these is completeness. So this one, the face is almost perfect. There's a little bit of a ding here. The metal cabinet here is perfect. There are no scratches. It's super clean. At least I don't even know if there's any other blemish except for that corner up there. Maybe a chip or two up here. But I would look for completeness. I would look for the condition of the faceplate, condition of the cabinet. I would look for images of the meters working. Now, they made 1 billion of these and they sell on eBay. And when I talk about pricing, I'll get into a little more detail on that. But make sure it has the meters. Hopefully there's an image with the lamps on. Hopefully there's an image with the meters working, because that would be something where they're not difficult to replace, but you don't want to have to track down a part. So I would definitely look for those. I would look to see if the lights are on in either direction. So these are lamps behind these. And again, these are easy to replace. Right? You can pop just a little LED in there and it's fine. Because I think I replaced both of these. Yeah, it's got it for both. So you want to make sure those lamps are working. Buttons and knobs, but again, there are so many of these and they get parted out that finding parts, at least I have found, is not going to be real difficult on this. So it's completeness, it's cosmetic condition, right? Those basic things. I don't know of any real gotchas with these, but I'm not a tape deck guy and I haven't worked on a ton of them. But I don't know of any gotchas with these other than to look for cosmetic condition and completeness and, just kind of general functionality if you don't want to get into buying parts. Now, prices, these things are crazy. So I'll throw up the obligatory, what is the seller thinking? $2,500 for these, for one of these. Even if it's a museum piece in the box, unless it's, signed by somebody famous, I can't see $2,000 or $2,500 or $2,200, whatever, for one of these. I think that's asking quite a bit. Even for a 909, that's like 909 pricing, and even to me, that's a little bit of a high ask, at least more than I would be willing to pay. But I would say one of these in really good condition, completely serviced, museum piece. Comes in the box, comes with manuals, comes with, whatever, tapes and things like that. Just perfect condition, $1,200 or more. Now, so many of these sold, and there was such a range of sold prices, it's really hard for me to kind of pin down. So I'm going to give you a lot of ish prices. So like $1,200 or more. Up to $1,500, I would say, would be a decent price if one of these was in perfect condition and completely serviced. 12, 13, 14, 15. To get one, now, so where would I put this one? I would definitely put this one more in the 1,000-ish range, right? Because it is super clean and I have done some service, but I haven't recapped it or anything like that. This has not been completely gone through. So, this would probably top out at about $1,000, maybe a little bit less than that. To get one that's working well, that maybe isn't really clean, maybe you've got a couple of more, dings to the face, maybe it's got a minor issue like a meter lamp is out or a directional lamp is out or the case is beat to, crap. You're looking at probably $850-ish, and again, that can flex up to $1,000 or it can go as low as $700. What we normally do in the shop is these are priced, depending upon the condition, these are priced around 8 to 9. Sometimes they'll be as low as 7. It really just depends, right? It really just depends on these. But so I'm kind of splitting the difference, probably about $850 for one that is in. It's working. Maybe a basic service has been done to it. It's got new belts. Maybe it's a little bit more scratched up than it should be. Something like that. That's probably about where those should sell. And then for parts, or to get one that you want to work on, you can find them as low as $300. Now, you can also find them for $300 where half the parts are missing. So I'll flash up a sale for one that looked to be complete, but you never know. You take the cover off and half the stuff on the inside has been butchered. So you just don't know what you're getting. I think a more realistic price to pay for one of these, if you're going to work on it, would be in that $400 to $500 range. But again, there were for parts are not working, sold all the way from $200-ish to $600-ish. So again, it's just there's a wide range there in terms of pricing for one of these that you may need to work on. So you have to keep that in mind. Right? When I was looking for the sale, I found a sale as low as $200 for one that looked to be complete, that was not working. For one that was restored and all that stuff, there was one out there and the best offer price was like $1,600. I don't know what they actually sold it for. The one that I found that sold for the most was that, $1,200. I think it was $1,200. Maybe $13 or $14 with shipping. So again, the prices on these will, it's a pretty big range. So all that to say, pick what you want to spend on one of these, and if you wait long enough, you can probably find one in the condition you're willing to deal with for the price you're willing to pay. Whether that's one to work on or one that's been recapped and restored and is in, pristine condition, wait long enough because they sell so frequently out there, you can find one. Locally, naturally, you're at the mercy of your local market. I wouldn't see, and Omaha, Nebraska prices, again, I told you what we price these at. $1,000 on the top end, $600 on the low end for a unit that is going to work and continue working because it's been serviced, right? So that's kind of where that one lands. So, overall, a great tape deck. I have not had problems with them. I don't know that it's my favorite aesthetic. This would look really good, with in a rack with some spec gear. It would look really good with like a 1050 or 1250 or 850, 950, the 50 series. Not so much the 80 series because the 80 series has black meters. It wouldn't really jive with that. But I don't know. I'm kind of weird that way. I want things to kind of like look like they go together. Some people are just like, I don't care what it looks like. I just want it to sound really good, But I'm one of those make sure it looks like it fits guy. So anyway, they're great tape decks. Again, I wouldn't pass one up at a good price. It might be what you need based upon your space limitations. So you can't go wrong with a Pioneer RT707. I'm not going to say it's the best tape deck ever, but in terms of Pioneer tape decks, I would say it's, other than maybe a 909, if I found one of those, this is the one that I kept. I don't know. It's just, it's a good little deck. So anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. As always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video. Got some more tape deck reviews coming up. Not super popular on the channel, but I like doing them. So I will catch you around. No, I'll see you around. I'll catch you later. Again, I'm getting over the COVID.